Episode 33, double three of the Unscripted Company podcast. Typically, going into episodes, Riley and I will plan about a week in advance of like, okay, do we want to talk about a specific topic? Do we want to each bring different news articles or current events throughout the week, and then we'll talk about it? So for those of you who regularly listen or watch, you kind of understand the format of the episode. And going into episode 33 for this week, we're going to talk about the ocean, the deep ocean, the deep sea, the unknown of what's out there. And we had put together all these notes and articles and pieces of evidence, fun stuff, which I imagine we'll get to at some point in time here in the near future. But as the news happens, if Riley's laugh hasn't given it away, we had breaking news happen earlier today that is so big that it just kind of has to take precedent over anything else we were going to talk about. Riley, I know you already know this, but can you believe there has been yet another assassination attempt on the former president of the United States, Donald J. Trump?
So I can and I can't believe it. Like, because and let us also kind of, preface by saying, like, even though we have things that we kind of plan out, it's still unscripted at the end of the day. We still just talk about whatever. But here's the deal, okay? It's one thing to attempt an assassination, and the first person that did, they did pay their life with it. But it's another thing for someone completely different to be like, you know what, I'm gonna finish what this man couldn't, and the thing is, there are plenty of articles out there. Like, we have so many Twitter posts, articles, things like that we're just gonna kind of start going through, and people are going to be talking about it and everything. But some people were saying how they just heard gunfire around the vicinity. Some people were saying that they were actually shooting at him. So again, we don't know, but the fact that this happened literally took precedent probably over, majority of what we're going to talk about tonight, but we'll try to keep it as less political as we possibly can. So
no, you're spot on. It developed very quickly. And even after recording this, I'm sure some more news is going to come to light. But even this morning, whenever I saw the news first break, I was like, okay, there was some gunfire around a golf course that Trump was at. Big deal. Whatever. It happens. I was assuming it was just, people wilding out over in Florida and just stuff happens. But then like later in the day, you're like, oh, hold up. There's like substance to this. It looks as though like this guy was actually looking for Trump, potentially, allegedly. I got to use the word allegedly a lot because all of this is still developing. The guy's still alive. He got arrested. He's been booked. We know who he is. So maybe we can dive into some of that and some of the evidence we do have. But yeah, this is like a real thing. This is like the second attempt. And like, when was the first attempt? It was about like a month and a half ago.
It was right before the DNC. Like, it was like the first week of August, I think. First or second week of August is when it happened.
Yeah, like early August, late July, I forget. But like, it's crazy. We can dive into the water cooler if you want. I don't really have too much. Like, this is a good week because I don't want to give a UNT football update because we got demolished by Texas Tech, and I would rather just sweep that under the rug and pretend like that never happened and just pretend like everything's hunky-dory, minus the fact that the former president had yet another assassination attempt. Lordy.
I mean, I'm kind of in the same book. I mean, I was going to give an update on, the Cowboys, but we had a oh man, Dak Prescott. Man, are you worth that $240 million, dog? I don't think so. Our defense didn't do well either, but I did want to do one thing before we get started into this. So if y'all remember last week, we got into a conversation and I mentioned a YouTube chef by the name of Joshua Weissman. So for those of you who know him, and he did which fast food restaurant has the best chicken tender, and they ruled Long John Silver's as the number one choice.
Did you end up going?
I told everyone I was going to go, and we went. Was it yesterday? Yesterday evening, we stopped by and I got some chicken, took it home, and we ate it. And if you don't believe me, let me actually go find the actual thing real quick of what I have, and I will show you real quick. Right here, this is me right here at Long John Silver's. holding the bag of chicken. All right, and we actually went home and we ate it. So I'm gonna give y'all my unofficial review real quick, because here's the thing: I'm not a chef. I'm not a professional chef. So his palates and his friends' palates are probably a lot different than mine. Um, First off, I will say this: Long John Silver's, you stiffed me out of one piece of chicken. Like they try, like $3, dude. Each piece of chicken is over $3 a piece, man. And it was like this big for each piece.
Wait, hold up. How much roughly, like you can do a rough estimate or round up or down, but how much did the meal cost you? Like the one meal?
So I didn't get a meal. I just ordered because we made, so we had some, we went, me and some guys went fishing. We had some like fries and hush puppies. So like I brought some of that home. So we just had that with the fish instead of just getting that there. So I literally ordered just 6 pieces of chicken, and they stiffed me on one piece. So I paid for 6 pieces and only got 5. I was very upset about that. Should have checked the bag before I went home, but that's beside the point. So I will say the chicken is still as juicy as what it was, like from what I remember as a kid growing up. I will say this though, the quality is not what it used to be. Like when I used to go as a kid, when me and my parents used to go, like you get a chicken tender, like, and it kind of looked almost like a flat fish fillet, but it was chicken.
Yeah.
That's what I remember going to Long John Silver's. These were more like,
Were they pretty skimpy?
they were like short and fat, like if that makes sense. And it's like it wasn't the same. Like the crunch was still there. Because we reheated it back in the air fryer because like we didn't eat it as soon as we got home, so I wanted to crisp it back up, so I threw it in the air fryer. The crunch was still there, the juiciness was still there, but just the quality overall was just not there. Like I probably would not have given. I think they rated theirs like a 7.75 or something like that. Like that won the contest. I'd probably give it a 5. Like I would 100% probably give that a 5 out of 10, maybe. And I weighed that a lot too because again they forgot a piece of my chicken, and I wasted $3, on that. So it's like for chicken that $18 like for that, and I'm like, well, I guess we know if people are here ordering this, we know how they're staying in business because they're overcharging for everything. But again, I told y'all I was gonna go. I did. My official rating is a 5 out of 10. That is what I give Long John Silver's. I would not consistently go there and eat this. So whoever is keeping Long John Silver's in business, you're playing yourself 100%, and you're wasting money that could be spent elsewhere.
I know, because like if you're gonna get some like fast food chicken, I don't think Long John Silver should be on even your top 10 options. Now I know the reason you went because you wanted to peer review that study that gentleman did. It also makes me wonder if the chicken that he happened to get that one day, if it just happened to be above average, or it just they got him some good chicken strips and it just happened to work out that way, and it skewed a bit from the reality of the situation.
Well, he lives in Houston. Like he moved from California to Houston, and so it's like maybe the quality down there is a little bit better. But like, I mean, overall, it is fast food, so it's like you're not. It's not like the quality. Like for me, if I had to choose, like, and granted, depending on what area you live in, you're going to have different chicken restaurants because there might be some that are northern based, some that are southern based. But living in the area that I live in, I have Popeyes, Chicken Express, Cane's, and if I had to choose like a restaurant based one, Babe's Chicken. I've never had Bojangles, so I can't count them. Other than that, I mean, there's not really like for like a chicken tender, like there's not really anywhere else that I'm like, okay, I gotta have this chicken tender. Like there's just really nowhere else that would cut it, as far as I know. Like as far as in our area, so like probably those 4. Like that's what I would choose from consistently if I had to choose a chicken tender.
Interesting. I don't really think I have like a go-to now that I think about it. Raising Cane's is pretty solid. We have what's called Bush's Chicken. It's very similar to like Chicken Express, which I know you're probably more familiar with. But nothing that really like blows it out of the water. I mean, Whataburger, if it's after 1 a.m., pretty decent. But that's just because it's after 1 a.m. and nothing else is open.
Right. Or
Nothing else really.
LSA. LSA's chicken tenders were always good.
They do, but to them, I think it's like I view that as like restaurant quality, because you're
Well,
going in to
yeah,
sit down and you have a server and you can get alcoholic beverages and it's a good time. You can sit on the
yeah,
rooftop.
right.
It's a good vibe.
Yeah.
Didn't you say they opened another one of those? Not to go down that rabbit hole, but
Yeah, they have one in the colony now. I will say I'm a little disappointed because they have changed some of their quality. I will say,
unfortunate.
unfortunate. They don't do the coleslaw anymore.
What?
And
That was good. I enjoyed their coleslaw.
Dude, I did too, man. But yeah, they got rid of it. They don't do it anymore. And I asked them why, and a lot of it had to do with COVID, chain supplies, stuff like that. So I was like, that's fair. But yeah, they don't do the coleslaw anymore, and that was probably my favorite coleslaw ever for anywhere.
Yeah. I totally forgot they even had that like stellar coleslaw until you brought it up. I was like, oh yeah, I remember. I love that. That was one of the highlights.
But yeah, there's just not a lot of chicken places like as far as restaurant quality. Like, I mean, you got Babes and you got LSA, but there's really nowhere else that's like restaurant-esque where you sit down and you eat, like, get served and stuff like that. So
yeah, man, it's just two white guys talking about fried chicken strips and coleslaw. It doesn't get much better than that. You know who else loves fast food?
Who's that?
The 45th president of the United States, Donald J. Trump. Did you know that he's actually like a huge fan of fast food?
I mean, he seems like he is. I'm just
one thing I went down a rabbit hole once reading this. There's a lot of, I don't want to say wealthy, but people that are in positions of power that really enjoy fast food. And the reason for that is they can have people go pick it up for them, or they can pick it up themselves through a drive-through. And most of the time, no one knows who that food is for. So it's not going to be tampered with. Like, think about this. Like, if you're a powerful person and people want you potentially dead, if you go to a restaurant, think about how many people are going to see that you're there before the food is then served to you, versus a drive-through where you can basically either yourself or someone else on your behalf can anonymously go through a drive-through, pick up the food, and it's prepared the exact same no matter where you are in the country or sometimes the world. If it's like a McDonald's or a Domino's pizza, they're international. So you can basically get the same thing wherever you are in the country, let alone the world, anonymously too. So
interesting.
Yeah. But besides the points, today has been a wild day. And by the time you, the viewer, is watching or listening to this, who knows? Maybe there's more information out there, but this is what we know thus far. So September 15th, a Sunday, what we know happened. We know shots were exchanged between a shooter and Secret Service at Trump International at Trump International Gold Club as the former president played golf there. Trump was around 300 to 500 yards away when the shooting occurred. FBI confirmed that they are actively investigating this as an assassination attempt. So for anyone out there that's like, hey, this could have been a coincidence. No, the FBI has already said this is being considered an assassination attempt. Trump said afterwards that, quote, "Nothing will slow me down. I will never surrender." Very powerful thing to say. Sounds very typical of him to say something like that in response to adversity like this. We know that the shooter was detained. More on that here in a second. We know that there was an AK-47, a backpack, and a GoPro camera, which were covered near the scene. We know that the shooter has been identified as someone named Ryan Routh. I haven't heard the last name said out loud, so I may be mispronouncing that, but Ryan Ruth, whose social media suggests that he was a Trump-hating, Ukraine war-supporting liberal. More on that in a minute, because it looks like he might have actually joined. Do you know what the Legion is? Like a mercenary group of volunteers over there?
I've heard of all these different groups, yeah.
Yeah, there's been some accusations or allegedly that he was actually over there in Ukraine, like legitimately fighting or recruiting people to fight. So it's very interesting. A lot of weird things going on here. And the last bit on here says Trump was not given complete perimeter protection because he's not a sitting president, of course, despite being hit by an assassin's bullet a couple of months ago. So it says, quote, "The FBI has responded to West Palm Beach, Florida, and is investigating what appears to be an assassination attempt on former President Trump. Another official commented that Trump was probably 300 to 500 yards away from the alleged shooter. The former president has issued a statement confirming he is, quote, safe and well, and declaring, quote, nothing will slow me down. And he actually put out an official statement on his own Donald Trump and J.D. Vance Make America Great Again 2024 letterhead. Says alert from Trump, all caps, bold. I think it's Arial font. It says there were gunshots in my vicinity, but before rumors start spiraling out of control, I wanted you to hear this first. In all caps, he says, I am safe and well. Says nothing will slow me down. I will never surrender. I will always love you for supporting me. Unity, peace, make America great again. May God bless you. Donald J. Trump, 45th President of the United States. The article goes on to say the Associated Press reports that the alleged shooter fled in an SUV and was later apprehended in a nearby county by local law enforcement, the officials said. The officials were not authorized to discuss the matter publicly and spoke on condition of anonymity about an ongoing investigation. Now, we mentioned this earlier, but an AK-style firearm was recovered at the scene near Trump's golf course, one of the officials and a third law enforcement official has said. The golf course was partially shut down for Trump as he played, and agents were a few holes ahead of him when they noticed the person with a firearm, the official said. The person appeared to push the muzzle of the rifle through the fence line. So we have some images here, but for those of you just listening, when they say the fence line, this is like a chain link fence. Think about like a typical suburban house with a chain link fence around it. It says the person appeared to push the muzzle of the rifle through the fence line, and that's when agents fired, the official said. Now we have some photos here actually of the scene, so we can see the muzzle of this AK-style rifle. I believe it's difficult to tell from these images, but I've seen in other Twitter posts that there was a scope on this, and I think we can kind of see that here on the right photo. So I don't want to say for factual purposes that's what that is, but I believe that is what that is. And then, of course, here's a backpack and there's a GoPro camera. Makes me wonder, the GoPro camera, was this for him to film the incident happening? Like if he was successful, like what is the footage to be done with at that point?
That's what I'm saying. It's like, what do you, because you would have to make a fake account, but even if you make a fake account, like tracking systems and technology is so expanded on now that they could track you through your IP based on where you post it at, unless you use a VPN and stuff like that. But even then, it's like, yeah, I don't know what he was thinking.
I even wonder these days, like, yeah, VPN will mask like, you know, your IP address and make it look like you're coming from somewhere else. I have a feeling that if the NSA really wanted to find you, or if the CIA really wanted to find you, they could find you. I feel like, in my opinion, if you were to do something very heinous that the CIA or the NSA was not a fan of, I feel as though they probably have means to find you regardless of how anonymous you think you are online, you know?
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, it just depends on, like, if I was making an account that was me, but under a different name kind of thing, it's like, you could still find me based on, like, you know, if I was involved, if you saw me in the video, whatever the case may be, like, they got facial recognition software. They've got, you know, the fact that I've bought and sold guns, like things like that. Like, there's ways for them to track me. And if, you know, obviously if you want to come get me, but you know where I'm at the end of the day. So it's like, if there was something that you really needed, you could come talk to me about it.
Exactly. It goes on to say, CNN reported that police have recovered, of course, a backpack and a GoPro camera, which we just mentioned. They think the attempted Trump shooter wanted to film it. I mean, I guess that makes sense. It says the following clip shows a heavy police presence on the roads leading to the golf club. I'm not going to play it. It's kind of boring. It's just cop cars chilling outside of a golf club. Makes sense if you have an assassination attempt on a former president, or if anyone shot at a golf course, like, yeah, there's going to be a lot of cops that show up. Fox News and a lot of other news sources now are reporting the shooter's name is Ryan Routh. Here's a photo of him. Very interesting individual. We'll dive into what we know about him thus far. Who, according to his social media profiles, which remain up for now, which, update on this, Facebook, I can show you a video of this. Facebook's starting to scrub where you can't actually go find his profile now. It's been taken down. Apparently, he has been supportive of liberal causes, particularly recruiting people to fight in Ukraine. There's a tweet here, or an X post, says Fox is identifying the shooter as this Ryan individual. He has been shown on social media to have a significant interest in Ukraine. This confirms claims his social media was supportive of liberal causes, though the photo of the shooter is still unconfirmed. I'll dive into some more useful info here in a second with this. He was very openly a hater of the former president based on some of his social media posts, which I'll bring up in a separate screen here in a second. It says, meanwhile, as the blame is dumped at Trump's supporters' feet, once again, it turns out Secret Service was inadequate yet again. There's a video which we can play here in a little bit. It's a debrief from the sheriff, Rick Bradshaw. He says that because Trump is not the sitting president, that he is not given complete perimeter protection, even though someone shot at him just a couple months ago. He said if Trump was president, then law enforcement would take protecting him more seriously. We'll play this video here momentarily. And there's some quotes from him in here. And then there's some clips from the mainstream media, CNN, etc. It's just very interesting because the narrative now is that because Trump's rhetoric is as strong as it is, that it's on him to tone down the rhetoric in order for the assassination attempts to cool down. So what else is there to share on here? So we already talked about this, but this is Donald Trump Jr., his son, posting the official message from the Trump-Vance campaign saying that he is safe and all. This is from the video from outside the golf club. This is from Colin Rugg on X. It says, breaking, Donald Trump was the intended target of the shots fired at Trump International Golf Club, according to CNN. Agents opened fire on the man who was at the Trump International Golf Course after they saw what appeared to be a gun, according to the New York Post. Quote, officials believe the shots fired at Trump International Golf Club were intended for former President Donald Trump, according to the sources familiar on the matter, CNN reported. Quote, sources said the Secret Service spotted a suspicious individual on the Trump International Golf Course in West Palm Beach and opened fire when agents saw what appeared to be a barrel of a gun, according to the New York Post. Senator Lindsey Graham says he spoke with Trump after the incident. Quote, just spoke with President Trump, and he is one of the strongest people I have ever known. He is in good spirits, and he is more resolved now than ever to save our country. The following video, filmed by this individual, shows a heavy police presence on the roads leading into the golf club. I'll play that real quick. For those of you audio only, just picture like a highway in Florida, basically leading up to a golf club. And there is, an upteenth amount of cop cars blocking off roads. Nothing too crazy. It kind of makes sense based on the situation.
So I will say this, though, is that they're saying how, he didn't have full protection detail because he's not the current sitting president, but they did a much better job this time of actually being vigilant and knowing what was happening and what was going on and taking action and not just so there's some conspiracy theory stuff that you could actually draw from this realistically if you wanted to. So let's go back down memory lane for just a second. And let's talk about so the first assassination attempt. Okay. Multiple reports were made to law enforcement at the location saying, hey, there's a gentleman on top of this building that has a rifle. He is here. Now, any previous historical event would have been okay, you see anyone with a gun approaching someone of high power and status that's running for president or former president, we don't even give them the opportunity to get set up. You take them down, you detain them, you end it right there. That did not happen. Now, the fact that the second time around, they immediately jumped on it. He got away, but they arrested him in a different county and nothing happened. He didn't even get close to even shooting the president. He missed every single shot that was taken, apparently. So one of two things could have happened. One, again, this could have been another setup by the Republican Party to make it look good. Or it could have been another setup by the Democratic Party to, again, try to take him out. I'm not saying anything, but it's weird to me that it's these happen so close together because it's one thing to have the one, especially since we haven't witnessed one in our lifetime, but now to have what they're saying is the second one within 2 months. To me, it's there's definitely going to be more to the story. This has just happened today. It's there's going to be so much more to this story. Now, with the guy that did the shooting and everything like that, First of all, like, and I'm going to kind of talk about this maybe a little bit later. I just want to kind of preface this, but there's a lot of talk still going on about, banning assault weapons, this and that, weapons of mass destruction, everything like that. Okay, first of all, they need to get out of here with all that kind of stuff, because let's just say this man was not allowed to have that gun. Like, let's just say he was not allowed to have it. How did he get it then? How did he get that gun? I'm just like, to me, it's like, if you ban guns or you try to ban guns, which is a constitutional God given protected right, that you're not going to actually be able to ban guns. You can say it all you want, but let's be honest, you're only saying it just to drive up gun prices and drive up ammo prices to stabilize the economy. That's the only reason you're saying you're going to ban guns, because you know it's going to get people to buy stuff. That's the
That's
only
an
reason.
interesting theory. I have legitimately not heard, and I'm sure it sounds very valid. I've never actually heard that explained that way, to where if you drive the fear of banning guns, naturally, of course, you're going to have people flood gun stores and ammunition to make purchases because they think they're not going to be able to. Now, what would be interesting, and I'm sure there's a journalist that's probably done this, we just need to do our own research, and potentially you've read into this and I haven't. How I would be curious to track the money of gun manufacturer lobbyists in Washington to see if there's a weird correlation between lobbyist money coming in to certain campaign efforts for those who are actively saying we should ban guns. You know what I mean? Because if you're a gun manufacturer, and I'm talking not a mom and pop one, I'm talking like your
Like
Smith and
Winchester,
Wesson,
like, yeah,
Winchester, like the ones that have been here for 300-400
yeah,
years.
yeah.
Um, that's a very interesting. That's an actual conspiracy. That's a conspiratorial thought of they're willing to throw money at candidates or individuals in places of power to just talk about the potential about banning certain types of weapons to then drive up the prices and the sales.
So this was my experience back in 2019 to 2020. So when I because I bought a couple guns back in that time, and I can honestly tell you, because this I was speaking with people over at Academy, and I spoke with people over at Cabela's, and if everyone noticed how there were ammo shortages because people were buying so much ammo, it's because Hillary Clinton at the time, was it Hillary or was it Joe? I can't remember which one it was. One
It's
of
probably
them,
Joe, because Hillary kind
yeah,
of stepped away after she lost in
yeah.
2016.
So whenever Joe already said that he couldn't take away guns, like he actually came out and said that, but Kamala Harris, his running VP, was like, "Oh, come on, like we can do it." So there was a lot of stuff going on there. There were a lot of instances where, when I went to go look for ammo, I couldn't find any because the manufacturers couldn't keep up with the production of ammo because it was all flying off the shelves. And it was only like, I mean, it was every ammo, but you'd be like, there was a lot more ammo that was being pushed out onto the shelves because they couldn't keep it with, like, for 9mm, for example, 5.56. Like, you couldn't find any of it. So like, I had to order all mine online from, like, from ammo websites, and so they were saying, like, yeah, because of all the stuff that's happening. They even said, like, I think 2019 was a record high. It was either 2019 or 2020 was a record high for gun sales, because going into COVID, people were freaking out.
Yeah.
And people who had never owned a gun before were like, "Oh my God." Like, I'm not, because like you had people fighting over toilet paper, for God's sakes.
We also had the riots. People forget, like
Yeah.
Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Seattle and
Yeah.
Portland. Like, do you remember? I think it was in Seattle. You had Chaz. You had like the Chaz Republic, and they had taken over like city blocks in Seattle.
Yep.
Minnesota was burning down. There were some other cities too that had, dare I say, riots.
Yeah.
I mean, you had a lot of peaceful protests, but some of those in some of those urban cities, they popped off to become riots. So people were scared.
Yeah. And so there were some employees that told me, like, this is a record high year for gun. And I think there was even articles that came out that was a record high for gun and ammunition sales in 2020, because so many people were buying stuff. And it was like, don't get me wrong, like, I mean, I bought my fair share of ammo too, but I didn't just, I went to the range, had my range time, things like that. But there were so many people who have never owned guns in their lives, or have never even shot a gun, were like, I need something to protect myself with. And even some of those were probably, your libertarian people, like, or liberal people. Um, And it's just amazing to me that it's like, okay, you had that real life fear with all the riots going on that you needed something to protect yourself. But now you're probably in that, and there are liberals that own guns, like that, that say they own guns, um, and they actually enjoy, that as a sport, And for me, it's like that's a sport also, but I also have it to protect my family, like at the end of the day, and so it's just you'd be surprised that by saying that, and like that's been the whole thing with Kamala and Tim Walz this year is we're going to take your guns, we're going to take your guns, we're going to take your guns, and people are out there probably like the ammo's been able, like they've caught up on the production, but it's just people are like you're not going to do that. Like there's no way they're going to actually be able to make that happen. So
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I put on these sunglasses. I'll call them my conspiratorial sunglasses because I have my own theory. Now, this is something I came up with this morning. So this is a working theory that, may not stand the test of time, but as of last couple hours, I'm kind of vibing with it. So here's how this theory works. And a lot of this is allegedly, so take it with a grain of salt here. The first assassination attempt was it Butler, Pennsylvania?
Mm-hmm.
I think that one was a legitimate inside job. I think it was a small group of people that really wanted to take him out. That was a legitimate, like, they were planning on him to die that day.
Yeah.
My thoughts on that. Now, what I think is happening is, well, that one got botched. It was a legitimate miss. Whoopsies. It happened.
Whoopsies.
But now I'm wondering, with the second attempt we had today, it didn't seem like the guy really got that close to truly taking him out. But like he got close, but he wasn't going to like within the minute take him out, right? So because they were able to not neutralize him. They got him arrested. He's still alive today.
Yeah.
I wonder if we're going to start to see a couple more of these attempts that we know, I say we, that those who know are going to all be botched. Everyone who's going to attempt the next couple of ones are all going to get caught and arrested, right? But the purpose of those is to get the population, the general public, accustomed to an event like this. Because if and when Trump gets very close to almost securing the election, like come early mid-November, they're just going to point blank kill him. And that's going to be, oh yeah, well, you can't escape 6 attempts, like if it's, you can only escape death so many times. So if the first attempt was legitimately, like they were like, we wanted to get him that day and they didn't, but then they're like, okay, well now if we normalize the idea of people that have been radicalized are trying to now kill him, but they're plants at the same time. Like they might be normal individuals that have been radicalized by intelligent I don't want to say the word deep state because that's such a broad topic, but by the 3-letter agencies. People get radicalized by 3-letter agencies. It happens all the time. Right. We have evidence of this. But if they have a number of attempts that they know are happening so that the way they can stop them from happening, so the assassination doesn't actually occur. But once you get 3 of those in, the public's like, oh yeah, like clearly, there's going to be more attempts on his life. And so that way, whenever he's about to win and they decide to remove him from the situation point blank, the public isn't that shocked. Like, yes, there will be an uproar and people will be upset. But, like if someone's going to try, if you have 10 assassination attempts on your life and the 11th one gets you, you're not that surprised, like it was going to happen eventually. This is my working theory. Like,
no. And I could see where that, where that makes sense. I could see a scenario. I could see it playing out where that makes sense. Now, here's a couple questions though. Is it what do you think would be the following events? Like when you say like uproar, like what do you think is actually going to happen? Because if it like more than 50% of the country is like, even people who voted Democrat last time were like, yeah, we're not doing that again. Like, a large percentage of people who have said that they voted Democrat last time are like, yeah, I'm a Democrat, but I'm voting Republican this time. Like, because of what's happened in our economy. Like, a lot of people are actually basing it like, and I love seeing this too because I've seen videos of this. I don't know if you know who Charlie Kirk is,
Yeah.
but I've seen some of his videos and some other people as well. But there are young people who are actually making sense of the whole thing, and they're like not voting based on their emotions and hatred for Trump, but they're like, look, I hate the economy right now. I can't afford to do anything, and I want to be able to afford to do stuff. So I'm going to vote Trump. And then you have older people who, you know, are kind of in the same boat. Like, everyone is in the same boat. Like, people have made claims saying, like, you know, my parents had savings, but because of inflation, all their savings got wiped out. Like, you know, just so much stuff has happened. And so a lot of people, I think, are finally kind of realizing, which I love it so much, that people are just realizing to not vote with their emotions, but to vote on the information that you have in front of you. Like, and there's definitely a lot to take in about that, because, like, you know, a lot of the times you have, you know, when one president takes over, they're technically taking over from the office that was before them, and so then they're inheriting all the things that were going to come in the afterblow. Sometimes that's the case, but in this time, I mean, the inflation was just so rapid that it's like nobody could keep up with anything. Like, nobody could. And so I I just want to know what is, because, and to kind of get back to the original point, is like, what's going to happen if that does happen? If they actually manage to do it, what is that actually going to look like?
It's a great question. I'm not sure about the methodology of how they'd go about doing that. Um, I do wonder though, like, what would happen with the general public if one of these assassination tips, like Butler, Pennsylvania, thankfully it just grazed his ear, but like if he would have, you know, passed that day, what honestly would have happened? I don't know. My gut tells me that, yeah, people are going to be upset. There's going to be like an uprising, and like on the internet, you're going to see people talk about it. But I think there's a difference between people that are very vocal versus those that are willing to actually do something about it. Now, I also see a scenario playing out where, and this is very conspiratorial, this is a very deep state idea here, where let's say you remove Trump from the picture. Trump's no longer on this planet. I could then see like a false flag operation occurring where you see, have you seen the videos? And this has happened over the years where you have these quote unquote white nationalist protesters. They hop out of like a U-Haul truck and they march around some town, but they're wearing the cheesiest clothing. And you're just like, bro, you're a bunch of feds. Like, you're not actual people that are doing this right now. Like, you're being planted somewhere to cause an uproar, whether it be on social media
Right.
or in the local news. I think you could see something like that happening in a major urban environment, or like Washington, D.C., in the nation's capital, which would then cause it would allow the sitting president at that time, in this case, it would probably be Kamala Harris. It would allow that administration to then roll out new legislation that could, you know, further take the country. I don't want to say communism, because it wouldn't be communism and it really wouldn't be socialism, but it would be taking us away from a constitutional republic. But they would do so in the light of, do you see how our country's falling apart? Do you see the hatred? Do you see, you know, the
They're going to play on people's
fear-mongering?
emotions, and
Yeah.
people are going to give into it. And the people that give into it are going to be the same people that have given into it for the past like 4 to 8 years.
And we've seen that happen in our lifetime. Like, the easiest one to point to, and I'm definitely not the expert in this, there's a lot of journalists that have definitely done their due diligence on this, but the easiest example that I can speak to is post 9/11 America in the Patriot Act. So, in really the formation of the formation and the bolstering and the doubling down on the NSA, a lot of that came out of post 9/11 policy because America was oddly unified together for the first time in a hot second. People wanted to go get the bad guys. The general public really didn't know who the bad guys were. And they created this policy called the Patriot Act. And if you were just to be told, hey, should we pass the Patriot Act? At that point in time, without reading the whole thing, you're like, heck yeah, we're passing the Patriot Act. I'm a patriot. I want to support other patriots. Like, let's go.
Right.
But what they don't know is like, oh yeah, they're tracking your phone calls and they're making, they're surveilling like Americans without warrants. They're reading through all your text messages. Like, there's countless things that they were doing and still are doing, and things that we aren't even probably yet aware that they're, actually doing. We know a lot because of Edward Snowden leaking all his NSA information to WikiLeaks and Julian Assange and all that. But our country loves to use these events to double down on allowing the government to have more power and control over certain aspects of daily life. And I could see them using something like this to truly move forward with that.
I think, like, and we kind of talked about, like, and it's funny though, because we mentioned this, and this actually just sparked this idea in my head. So I think it was last week or the week before, we talked about a Great Reset. Briefly talked about it, but we talked about it. For all my history people out there, bear in mind, Boston Tea Party and the independence, like all that stuff, that the Americans fought for their independence from Great Britain. Over a 2% tax, everyone. Now we're paying what, upwards of a 40% tax now?
Dude, I don't even know, man. But yeah, you're spot on. Just to double click on that, it's like the Boston Tea Party was over something so minuscule in comparison to today's concerns.
And y'all are just okay. And yeah, I'm gonna be 100% honest, and I'm gonna be a little, passive aggressive here. Y'all are 100% okay paying that and not doing anything about it. And I get it, like there is a fear behind it, because it's like, all they'd have to do is be like, yo, we're inciting martial law. Military is going to start rolling into each city, doing this, this, and this. You can't be out past this time doing that. I can see where that fear would come into play. But at the same time, it's like, we are supposed to be the ones that are voting the candidates into office. We're supposed to be the ones they work for us at the end of the day. And I don't like pulling that card. I don't like saying that, because I see videos of people doing that all the time. And I'm like, you just sound so cringe saying that. But I do agree to a point. These are publicly elected officials that now it has become not a service job, but a career for a lot of these people, where they've made millions upon millions, if not billions of dollars, staying in the same position they've been in because nobody's done anything about it.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. They are public servants in a sense. I think technically, like by definition, they are public servants. And it is wild. And we've talked about this before, and everyone always talks about this, but it's wild how you have people that get elected and people are upset with those that are elected, but yet they keep electing the same people over and over again. And you have people that end up serving. Like Joe Biden's the perfect example. Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer. I'm going blank on the Republican Party. Turtle Man, what's his name? I just went blank on his name, but I can picture him right now. He's been in office for a hot second.
Yeah. God, I can't think of his name right now either.
Yeah, no worries. But yeah, you have all these individuals that have been serving 20, 30, 40, 50 years. And clearly, things have not been getting better per se. I mean, yes, some things are getting better. Certainly, it's still the best time alive to live, just in general. But yeah, there's a lot to unpack there. But I don't even think the real concerns is about having a militia or like martial law rolling into town. I think the concern is more about the changing of law and fiscal policy and what we do overseas and things like that. Because a lot of the stuff that our government will do, like, we'll never know that they're doing it. It's all hidden behind the scenes. And you'll just, like the whole like Patriot Act stuff, like unless we had whistleblowers that came out and said something, to this day, we would have no idea that any of that was happening. Yep. So then you have to ask the question, what else is happening, or what will one day happen that without a whistleblower, you don't even know.
Yeah, and like I said, I mean, I just what I encourage people to do is just do some research, man. Like, don't get me wrong, I don't spend all day researching stuff, but I watch a lot of YouTube. I watch a lot of you know people. I do watch stuff from both sides, like and I'll be honest, some stuff a little bit more in certain cases to the right side, depending on what the video it is that I'm watching, but I do watch a lot of different things to try to get as much information as I can to form my own opinions, because you can't trust a lot of news outlets. You have to find the people like your Charlie Kirks, your Steven Crowders. Like, you have to find people like that, per se.
Independent journalists.
Like your independent journalists that will take the time and have their own people that will do it. Because if you trust the large news stations, they're only going to push to you what they want to push to you. And they're going to pick and choose what that is, versus other people who are like, hey, this is based on our research. These are based on our contacts, and this is what we're seeing and what we think could happen. And again, the biggest thing that's being talked about right now, especially now after probably this is another thing too. They talk about banning guns, and last week, for those of you who don't, or the week before, there was a school shooting in Georgia. Okay, very sad that it happened. Next thing you know, they're talking about banning all assault weapons and guns. An assassination attempt happens on Donald Trump, and then there's crickets about banning assault weapons and guns. So it's like, if you're going to talk about it in one aspect, you need to talk about it in all aspects. That's all I'm saying. You can't pick and choose which one you're going to talk about banning guns with if you're going to be serious about it. So they use it on the large scale platforms to really, I think, to just incite people to be like, oh crap, I need to go buy more ammo. Oh crap, I need to go buy this $1,000 gun. And I'm like, honestly, I'd just be fine with just buying more ammo. You don't need the guns. Buy the ammo to keep with the guns that you already got. That's besides the point. I'll get off my soapbox now.
No, you're good. It's a good soapbox. It's a sturdy, well-built oak or mahogany soapbox. It's good. One thing I wanted to mention was if anyone out there is listening is very curious to go down the rabbit hole of what is the government doing that we don't know they're doing, Whitney Webb is a great journalist, an independent journalist. Her website is Unlimited Hangout. I think it's .com. I'll fact check that here in a second. But Whitney Webb has really gone way deep down the rabbit hole in this one, so much so that she doesn't even live in this country anymore, just for her own purposes. What else was I going to mention? Oh, to your point also about the need to have multiple different news sources and not relying on mainstream news outlets. For those of you listening, you kind of have to remember, if news organizations, let's take TV news for an example, Fox, CNN, MSNBC, whoever it may be, if they run commercials, if they have advertisers, there's a narrative there. If you are reliant on advertisers as your source of income, you're going to keep certain things off the air. You're going to spin narratives a certain way to ensure that those advertisers continue to spend money with you.
Yep.
That's something I don't think a lot of people remember. So whenever you see that commercial break and it says brought to you by Pfizer, you might be able to put two and two together there, just a little bit on what's going on. One thing real quick, let's get back to the news of the day, because one thing I wanted to bring up, this is an interesting nugget of info that is starting to come out about the alleged shooter from today. This is from Laura Loomer, writer of the Loomer Report on X. It says, breaking, New York Times profiled the shooter Ryan Routh, who tried to assassinate President Donald Trump today. Ryan served in the U.S. Foreign Legion in Ukraine, which is reportedly tied to the CIA. Not only did Newsweek interviewed Ryan, the attempted Trump assassin, 2 years ago, about his choice to fight in Ukraine in 2022, but in 2023, the New York Times also profiled the shooter and his efforts to recruit foreign fighters for Ukraine illegally in Pakistan and Iran by purchasing fake passports for Afghan soldiers in Pakistan. So the U.S. government knew this guy was doing illegal mercenary work, and they never stopped him. Even worse, the anti-Trump leftist media wrote glowing profiles about him and gave him a platform. Ryan's cell phone number traces back to Fight for Ukraine, which has been accused of being a terrorist organization focused on recruiting mercenaries to fight in Ukraine for the sake of killing Russian soldiers. So she has some news clips here from various news sources. So here's like a direct quote from one. With Legion growth stalling, Ryan Routh, a former construction worker from Greensboro, North Carolina, is seeking recruits from among Afghan soldiers who fled the Taliban. Mr. Routh, who spent several months in Ukraine last year, said he planned to move them, in some cases illegally, from Pakistan and Iran to Ukraine. He said dozens had expressed interest. Quote, "We can probably purchase some passports through Pakistan, since it's such a corrupt country," end quote, he said in an interview from Washington. It is not clear whether he has succeeded, but one former Afghan soldier said he had been contacted and was interested in fighting if it meant leaving Iran, where he was living illegally. And here's like a screenshot from the Fight for Ukraine website. Those, theoretically, they'll pay you $1,200 USD per month. So it's just interesting. There's also like interview clip here. I'm not going to play it. It's like 10 minutes long. But we can see this is Newsweek interviewing the guy that attempted to assassinate the former president, today. So he's been interviewed by news sources before, and he's been working overseas. So I imagine that our intelligence was kind of aware of this guy. Now, what I'm about to say might sound a little cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, but one thing I couldn't help making the connection with here, Lee Harvey Oswald, he went over to Russia before he came back to theoretically assassinate JFK. This guy left the US, went over to Europe, and then came back, and then just so happened to attempt to assassinate the former president.
Do you think this could be like a so okay, I'm gonna play a devil's advocate here for this particular purpose. So have you seen, you probably have, Captain America and Winter Soldier?
Yeah, I think I saw it when it came out, but I couldn't remember any of it if you were going to reference. But go ahead with it. Like,
so in the movie, and honestly, I'm gonna say spoilers, but if you haven't seen the movie by now, and it's been almost 10 years, then okay,
that's on you.
Yeah, that's on you. Steve Rogers, Captain America, his best friend, who he thought was killed in the first movie, Bucky, they ended up finding his body in the snow and in the mountain, and they essentially fried his brain, gave him a fake like robotic arm, also turned him into a super soldier, and turned him into an assassin essentially. And then so that happened over in Germany, and then they sent him over to the US, and that's where he ended up killing Tony Stark's mom and dad, also the kind of stuff, and they infiltrated Shield, and started putting Hydra stuff into that, and kind of everything. Besides the point, he was an American soldier that was then corrupted and turned into something else. Not saying this guy was a previous soldier, but it kind of just adds into that dialogue of like this random guy, and then he went to this country, maybe someone got a hold of him, some 3-letter agency or something like that, and fried his brain, and they're like, hey, you're going to go do this now, and then send him back over there.
It makes you wonder. There's a lot of odd correlations, to say the least. And another thing, too, that Laura Loomer noticed, and a lot of other people noticed online, too, was, you want to know on 9/11, 2024, what Time Magazine had as their cover? Trump on a golf course. So, maybe the simulation had a little bit of a glitch and, got ahead of itself a bit. And this could honestly just be a little, coincidental. We know he loves to golf. He's seen golfing quite frequently. If you were going to say someone's getting in trouble and you're going to depict Trump, you'd probably put him on a golf course, getting stuck in a sand trap and a golf cart. Like, I get it. Very coincidental. But on September 15th, just 4 days later, he's on a golf course and almost assassinated. Or there was an attempt at assassinating him.
I don't know, man. I mean, it's still too early to tell. I mean, we'll probably, I know we didn't want to spend the whole episode on this, but it was just too. There was a lot to unpack there, and there's still going to be more to unpack because it's just like the last one. We're probably going to hear more stuff about it throughout this week, and we'll probably have some sort of update going into next week. But it's just, it's one of those things. Like, by us talking about this doesn't mean, again, we're not being biased towards either side, but it's just interesting to not only did we experience one potential assassination attempt, but now it's two. Like, it's just crazy to me. So
it is crazy. One thing to pull up real quick. Facebook is starting to scrub where you can't find this guy's Facebook page anymore. So there's videos of people showing the page did exist. Now the page doesn't exist anymore. I also got a good kick out of this image real quick. It just says, on the left, it's a picture of George H.W. Bush, Barack Obama, George W. Bush, and Bill Clinton. It says 10 wars, 0 hitmen. And on the right, it's a picture of Donald Trump, 0 wars, 2 hitmen. And then you had this funny photo that's been circulating too. It's a Photoshop of, if anyone remembers, there's an iconic photograph of George W. Bush being told he's reading in front of an elementary school on 9/11, and it's him being told like 9/11's happening, and he has a very shocked look on his face, as anyone would when they're told that in that situation. But it's photoshopped to show Kamala Harris as George W. Bush saying the second shooter missed. I don't know, got a big chuckle of that. And then lastly, one thing I had pulled up, and I've been kind of tracking this throughout the podcast too, is this is Polymarket. I don't know if you're familiar with Polymarket, but for those of you who aren't, the concept is you can bet real money on certain situations around the world or in real life, from very simple things about who's going to win the coin toss in a football game. But in this case, they have a whole setup for the 2024 election. And in this case, what we're looking at here is the current betting odds, the same way you'd bet on a sports game, for who's going to win the election. And this has been teetering back and forth. It's been very interesting. Before, maybe about a month before the debate that just happened, Trump had a massive lead. It was like, I think it was like 58-42, something wild like that. When I first pulled this up earlier this afternoon, maybe around like 2 p.m., it's now about 9:30. It was like Trump was up 52-48. Then when the podcast started about 50 or so minutes ago, he was down 49-51. Now it's balanced out 50-50. If I refresh it, let's see what happens. It's 50-49. So it's a very close percentage there. There's like less than 1% of a difference there. So it's just very interesting to see. This is people that are betting real money on the scenario. This is different from, the polls per se. However, this doesn't mean like the overall American sentiment at the same time. This is just people putting money behind who they think is going to win. But it's a very interesting statistic to look at when it comes to the 2024 election is, where are people putting their money on the odds of who they think is going to win? And right now, it's a complete toss-up.
Right. I want to see what the current, like the actual, not the betting, but I want to see what the current.
Like the polls?
Yeah.
Let's see if we can find.
Okay, I think I found it right here. So it's showing, it's showing, Democrats are down, or Republicans are down right now. Not by much, but they are.
Yeah, it looks like I'm looking at 538.com. This was the first site that popped up. And this has it. This is updating average for each candidate in the 2024 presidential polls according to each poll's recency, sample size, methodology, and house effects. This is ABC News.
Yeah.
It has Harris at 48.1% to Trump being at 45.4%. It's been very interesting, though. It's so difficult to look at these polls compared to like the last two election cycles to truly know
Yeah, because like the last two, I mean, Hillary Clinton was like winning by a lot, and then Trump came in and won at the last second, and then the 2020 Biden and Trump were pretty much even during the entire thing, and that's pretty much how this one's shaping up now.
Yeah. What's really interesting here is this graph going back to Polymarket. You can see, so this is by month, starting in March, April, May. They're pretty much neck and neck. This is technically Biden and Trump at that point in time. May, they're tied. June, Trump breaks away like a lot. It seems like it's a no brainer at that point. In July, Biden absolutely collapses statistically. But then you start to see Harris pop up and just like, boom, skyrocketed. And ever since then, it's kind of been a little bit neck and neck. It'll be very interesting because we're only, I know it has it on here, how far, we're 51 days out from this. So by the time this episode gets posted, we'll be about 49 days out. That's not that much time left.
So, because I'm looking at a map here on the 270 to win, which is the consensus on the presidential. I'll just
Yeah, throw that up.
pull this up here real quick. So this is currently what it's showing as, and this is probably I think one of the main websites that they're going to base a lot of their stuff off of. But we still have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 states that are undecided. We right now, Colorado's going to be a big one for them. New Mexico's going to be a big one for them. Virginia, but if we obviously we're if we get Texas and Florida, those are two very big ones for us.
Yeah, it's wild because Georgia's like a swing state now. It's kind of wild.
I know.
Like our whole life, Georgia's always been like deep conservative. So in this case, deep red, deep blue back in the day. But man, it's they're a swing state now. North Carolina will be interesting. I could see Arizona's a swing too now. I feel it's been interesting following like Carrie Lake and her efforts there.
Yeah, I could. I don't know. It's so hard to kind of tell right now what's expected.
And you see how Texas is like pink also?
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah. Because we're not all the way there yet, but if we get that and we get Florida, that'll put us up there. But I don't know, because right now, yeah, it could be either one. But that's the thing, though, man. Like, I mean, I don't want to get too heavily into this conversation right now. But I know you said you were going to wait to tell me or to say it during this episode. But what could you foresee happening? Like, just with current events right now, just if you had to give me a straight answer of what you could possibly see happening based off what happened today and currently right now with what you've been seeing with the debate and all that kind of stuff.
When you ask that question, you're saying like, what do I view as the outcome of the election?
Yeah.
That's tricky. I would say right now, September 15th, 2024 at 9:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. Is it Central Standard Time? Are we in
It is
Central Daylight Time, Standard Time? Anyways.
This is off the record too, by the way. Like we're just talking here, everyone. So I'm curious.
I could see Harris winning it. Yeah. I could. It's wild because if you were to ask me this, like, I don't know, a month and a half ago, and we've talked about it too on the podcast.
Yeah.
I was like, this is like Trump's race to lose. But it's interesting seeing what appears to be the support for her coming out of absolutely nowhere. It's baffling to me the support she's receiving. And I think from my perspective, I think the support she's receiving is not because of who she is as an individual. It's kind of twofold. It's the not Trump vote. She's the anti-Trump of anything. It doesn't matter who's in there. It's just the fact that it's not Trump. But then I think similar to Biden, she can be manipulated. She's a pawn in this game. And I think she knows that. I think we have enough evidence, and we can go into this like on a live stream or something, but we have evidence that, did she allegedly sleep her way to the top? Maybe, with these videos of her hanging out with certain politicians over the years and famous folks. But I think similar to Biden, like they can use her to where, like, in title alone, she would be president, but not in the day-to-day operations. I think the team around her, that would be those that are currently in Washington, are still going to keep on keeping on.
Right.
And I see enough evidence from my own perspective that we're getting ready to have a lot of conflict in the Middle East. And I think in order for that to be carried out, the current administration needs to keep at the helm, because we've seen it already through Trump's first term as president. He doesn't want to deal with all these proxy wars and silly military
No.
efforts. He wants to protect the homeland first. And that's a 180 from what we see.
Which is what a president should do.
Right. I know. Yeah. Like it baffles my mind that like I see it. I know why they do it. It doesn't make it right. It doesn't mean I believe it, but like I get it. I see it from that point of view. It's messed up, but it is what it is. But that's why I see her winning. And it's one of those things where, oh, who was it? Was it Peter Thiel? He was on. So I don't know if you've ever heard of the All In podcast. It's basically 4 billionaires, or was it 3 billionaires and a millionaire all hanging out, and they do what they every year they do what's called the All In Summit, and it's just like, you know, a conference they put on. They have guest speakers come in, and I think it was Peter Thiel. Now Peter Thiel founded Palantir. He goes back. He's a buddy of Elon. Goes back to, I believe, the PayPal days, and they asked him the question of, I forget verbatim how they asked him. So like definitely someone go check it out. There's a clip of it out there. There's clips of him saying this. They ask him like, how do you think the election's going to go? Who do you think is going to win? Do you think Harris is going to have to cheat to win? And he goes, well, I don't think it's cheating. He says something along the lines of like, they would bolster it in favor of somebody. And so his opinion was like, at this point in time, because it's basically a 50-50 toss up, it seems,
Right.
in the election, that if they were to bolster it, Kamala wins because they bolster it. They're not cheating, quote unquote, air quotes. They're bolstering it.
Right.
So that's my take. I truly don't know. And a lot could change. Like so much could change between now and then.
100%.
But just the way I see it going, I feel like she would win by like 8%. And I think there's going to be a lot of recounts, but I think she wins by like 1%.
So I do kind of agree with you. And we'll kind of wrap this up after this, but I think there's probably going to be more recounts in this election than probably the past 2 elections combined.
Yeah.
Like I feel very strongly about that. I feel, and there's already news out there, not just Texas, but a lot of states are, they're actually going through to make sure, you know, everyone, you know, like every registered, you know, citizen in this country is registered. Like they're making, like people are like, I think Texas has already eliminated like 1 million plus illegal voters. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I saw an article about that. I didn't fully read it, but I think I saw something about that.
Yeah, no, I remember seeing a headline about that.
And so there are states that are actively doing that right now, you know, and I've seen people come out and, you know, talk about how the only reason why they're allowed the borders to be open is because they're trying to get easy votes from illegal immigrants, you know, and again, you know, y'all know my stance on this. Like, if you're going to come over here, do it the legal way. If you have to wait 6 months, you have to wait a year. I'm sorry, that sucks, but do it the legal way. I don't care. But I do agree with you though, because it's so close right now. But the thing is, I was like you said, 51 days, so much can happen in 51 days. Like, it could stay like this for that entire 51 days, and that very last day is when everything actually like kicks in. But right now, it's definitely still too soon to tell, because we just got over the next debate, which, you know, I didn't watch the full thing, but I watched some stuff, and from what a lot of people said, it was another horrific debate. It wasn't really much of a debate.
No, yeah, it wasn't.
And I'm like, okay, can we actually have like a legitimate debate now? But anyways, I think once October hits, and we start heading through October, I think is when we're going to get a much more, you know, full picture about what everything's shaping up to be like. I will say, if, you know, if Kamala is leading now, whatever Trump is trying to do, he needs to figure something out. He hasn't. To me, it seems like he hasn't had a lot of FaceTime, which, I mean, respectfully, I mean, the dude's had 2 assassination attempts on his life, but you need to be out there. Like, you need to show face. Like, you need to show people, like, hey, like, I am still here. Like, I'm not just going to post something on a website or a page. Like, I am still here. Like, let's get this done. And again, at the end of the day, whoever wins wins. I mean, like, they can have as many recounts as they want, but if the numbers are there, then whoever wins wins. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, we made about an hour 10 in. We originally were going to talk about the oceans, the unknown, so many mysteries out there, which we'll definitely dive into that. Maybe we'll get into that with our live stream for our 35th episode that's coming up. So if this is episode 33, 2 episodes out from now, y'all are smart cookies out there. If you go look on our channels, you'll know. You look in the show notes, look in the newsletter, which if you haven't subscribed to it yet, why not? If you're hanging out, hang out with us an email as well. We'll update you there so you know exactly when, where, how you can join us on that live stream. Also, while we're at it, I would be remiss if I didn't say, go ahead, like the video, subscribe, follow, leave a comment, let us know. I'll just ask this question, and Riley can add his own question if he wants, but as of today, or as of when you're watching this, who do you think is going to win the election? Because I'm curious. We can do a straw poll in our comments. We'll see what people are thinking. Might be a bit skewed, but I'm open to hearing what people think is going to happen out there. When in doubt, the other thing you can do is go to unscriptedcompany.com. You can find all our stuff there. We've got a merch site. Check it out. We'll probably have some promo codes, some specials coming up for the live stream. So if you're holding off, no worries. You can get a little discount code at that live stream. But as always, Riley always gets the last words. So Riley,
always,
let me hand it off to you and drop these young kids with some wise knowledge.
Right. Well, again, as always, again, thank y'all for just tuning in. Thank y'all for just sticking it out with us. We do appreciate it. We appreciate all the support. Again, we have our Twitter page also that I've been, just got started. So we're slowly but surely adding stuff onto that. But yeah, we just enjoy having y'all here. And I mean, based on our overall topic tonight, the only thing I can really say, and I think I said this before, is just, do your research, people. We have a duty to make sure that we are gaining enough knowledge and not just what the media is going to feed us. Like, go do your research, go talk to people, like even, what my partner here said, like, post a comment, like we enjoy the conversation. We don't want to have an argumentative debate, but we just enjoy the conversation. We want to know what people are thinking right now. We want to kind of get that conversation going so that we can actually understand where people are coming from. Like, that's what we're here for. That's why we talk about these things. Again, we don't lean towards either side. So at the end of the day, do your research and don't vote based on your emotion. Again, I've been seeing people as of late that have been saying, I'm not going to vote on emotion. I'm voting based on how our economy has looked and how everything is going right now and what we want to see moving forward in our economy and in our country. So that's what I got for this week. And hope you guys will join us and continue joining us. And we appreciate y'all.